welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with RokoM and Michele. And this week, this week's going to be on the power of hope. And how it came about is I'm a member of John Maxwell team. And so I was actually, Roko and I are both coaches, and we're always in learning mode. And so I was actually listening to and learning from Valerie Burton, who is the certified coach at John Maxwell team. And she was talking around coaching, and one of the things that she said was around hope. And she said, as coaches, and so I'm going to substitute coaches with leaders, right? Because we're the same. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's one of leaders' responsibilities, but is that it's our role to identify and create and help people, connect to hope. And she said, because hope creates goals. And it just struck me that I thought, you know what, this would be a really cool topic to unpack and talk about, especially everything that we've gone through these last few years with COVID. And, Roko and I've always talked about leaders. That's one of the responsibilities of leaders, is that as you're giving people the real lay of the land, you can't leave them with this sense of where do we go from here, but we have to leave them with hope. So I want to start off with a quote. And then I want you to jump in, because this one, Zig Ziglar, which I'm sure everyone's heard of, he says, when there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. And I so have to agree with that, obviously, with everything else that we talked about. And so I know you and I talked before we started. So what's on your mind with this one?
Yeah, so just bringing it all around, it's this idea of hope is creating or beginning the cycle of possibility. And I shared with you, I had read a couple of articles, because there's this debate around whether hope is a leadership trait or not. It's been primarily discussed in religious settings, not necessarily in business or in terms of leadership skill sets or traits. But the articles that I was reading, I liked where it went, and it was saying, hope is this thing that leads to optimism, which optimism leads to passion leads to possibilities, and then possibilities lead to positive change. And to that quote, to go back to your quote, it's the idea that there is something better out there, that even amongst all this uncertainty that you might be feeling today, or the dread of today, that there is something out there better.
Well, better or something out there. Yeah. Because to me, it's like, when you think about hope's this glimmer. Mm-hmm. And so back to Margie Haganey with what's a little bit better looking like is hope. And the fact that we don't think this is all there is. And I think with teams, with all the change that we've gone through, maybe the organization, stock market crashes and stuff, where do we look at stuff to go, you know what? There's so much we have no control over. I think hope comes from that identification of the fact that we have control over certain aspects always.
Yes.
And in that place is when we look to say what's possible.
Right.
And you had the story from the Apollo 13.
Yeah. So one of the articles talked about hope was this combination of alignment, engagement, and vision. So the article before that I just shared with you was like the cycle of hope. And then this, which was
you so relate to, because you're all processy, right?
Right. And then this other article was more about like looking at it as embedded in the environment. Like how would you know that it was there? And it was this embodiment or combination of engagement, alignment, and vision. And so the author basically said, I love movies. And one of the movies he wanted to quote was Apollo 13. And he said, there was an explosion on Apollo 13, and in the command center, the leader basically said, and I'm going to read it, gentlemen, at this moment, I want you want you all to forget the flight plan. From this moment on, we are improvising a new mission. How do we get our people home? And so in that one moment, you had the vision, how are we going to get our people home? You had the engagement, you know, he was saying, forget everything that we've put forward. We've got to focus on this. We need everybody's attention on this. And it was about alignment. It was about, it's not just me as the leader, it's everyone. We all hands on deck, you know, to get our people home. But the underpinning of that whole scene was this idea of hope, because the leader was encouraging and acknowledging that the people in the room had the knowledge, the skill sets, the capabilities to bring the people home, to bring our people home.
Well, and the opposite of that, right? When you talk about that there is a future, is that all hope was lost.
Yeah.
I mean, in that moment, if you went with the original staff, it's like, okay, they're gone. We're never going to see them again.
Yeah.
And so for someone to step in and go, okay, forget the rule book.
Yeah.
We're now going to align around what is this new goal, right? So if you look at hope creates goals.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The goal was that we're going to get our people home. Okay. Yeah. And in that moment, it is those possibilities that all of a sudden it's like, okay, how can we do this?
Yeah. And the other part of that article, and it touches on what you said too, around the incrementalness of it. It's not this one and done. So the article talked about that hope isn't a guarantee for success, but it's an incremental movement towards success.
Well, and it's the thing that's going to start motivating to where you can start going towards something, right? Hope creates goals. So if you don't have hope, then you're just stuck in this place. And you made a comment that there was this debate around whether or not, you know, it's a leadership attribute or whatever. I'm going to say it's a leadership responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say this is because I don't remember having intentional conversations with leaders about making sure that the message you're delivering has hope in it as much as I did after COVID hit. And so I think the process that we've all gone through in this massive change that we went through, whether it's how we work, where we work, how we engage with people, you know, the financial impact of, you know, you and I are in healthcare, have been in healthcare, the impact to healthcare organizations, that there was this coaching around leaders as they were trying to be real with their people, that you still have to give people hope.
Yeah.
There still has to be a reason to get up in the morning and keep going and to come back and fight the fight, right?
Yeah.
And hope is that thing.
Yeah. And I think that so as you were saying that, what was going through my mind is, again, if this is a conversation about leadership, how do we create hope? Because it's like anything else, right? Sounds great, but how do I actually do it? Right. And so for me, you know, again, I started to research, like, you know, what are people saying about how you do hope and things like that. And we've already said some of it. The ones that really stood out were the first one is facing fear. So what are people thinking? What is the scary thing that are holding people back? Get those beliefs out on the table. We've talked about the power that beliefs can have, you know, based on people's experiences, and it'll drive your results. So if you want to create this idea of hope, you've got to acknowledge what those fears are. The second one is acknowledging your people, acknowledging the skill sets and what's going well today. So yeah, you've got some fears, but here are some strengths that we have, and here's some examples of, and let's acknowledge those examples of what went well and how we managed it, so we do have the capability to move forward. And then it's, you know, thinking about, well, what could be done, to your point of what's a little bit better look like. We all have ideas. It's just a matter of creating the space for those ideas to come out.
Well,
and let the voice be heard.
The thing that comes to mind for me when you're talking about that is even in a coaching setup, and like I said, coaching / leadership, just throw them together, because that's a core aspect of being a leader, is the ability to coach your people.
Right.
You may not have the certification or anything else, but those aspects and those elements are there. But it's about saying, you know, to give hope and possibility to stuff, is recognizing, when have we overcome things that were just daunting in the past? Because that connects us to the fact that there is a possibility of doing this. Because if we look back on it, we would have thought that was an impossible thing. There's no way that we could have ever done XYZ, right? And yet here we are today.
Yeah.
And so once that happens and you start reflecting back on the accomplishments that were done in the past, then we can start figuring out, okay, these are all the things we can't do anything about. But what are the things that we can start turning those rocks over and saying, what is possible? What is incrementally better? You know, what levers can we pull?
Right. So I want to build on that too, because I think it's important as a leader, you know, if you're doing those things, I think one of the things that's important is for the leader to know what his team will need in those moments to be successful, right? So part of that is getting to know the people on your team. So in a moment of an uncertainty, you know, like I remember back on our team when we were working together, we had 30 people with 30 different personalities, and you and I had to know what each of their personalities were like, so that when we were put into a circumstance where, you know, we needed to get hope and build hope within the team, we had to know what each of them needed in that moment to be successful and to be able to think of those possibilities. And so that's the other piece of it.
Yeah. And I'm sure people listening to leaders, and I'm thinking back to COVID, because COVID's the, you know, I mean, how many pandemics do you have in your lifetime, right? Hopefully not. Oh, here's number 6, you know? But I mean, that was a time of stepping in to lead in a way that I had never even thought of leading before, right?
Yeah.
And engaging with a team in ways that it was, I mean, you just talk about blowing up and starting over, is the connection points that had to be made, because as a leader, you are engaging with people. These are not widgets.
Right.
Right. And so if it is a widget, you don't have to give your widget hope. Okay. Your widget is just going to be a widget. Okay. But when you're talking about people, to your point, there's all these experiences that they've had in the past, and that stuff comes flooding back. Mm-hmm. when things happen and when change happens at that level. And so you do have to at least have that conduit of communication going, to where there's a feedback loop. So you can tap in and go, hey, what's happening here? How are things going? How are you feeling? You can actually hear. It's not just email and text. But I think that's it. And then there's got to be something to where you've, as a leader, wrapped your brain around where that hope exists. Because it's like any change management. You have to be there at the point that you can articulate it before you engage with your team, because you could send them over the edge and give no hope. So it's right. Like, as a leader, you've got to figure out where's the blink of light, shining star, light at the end of the tunnel, whatever you want to call it, that I can articulate and I can latch on to know that, you know, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Michelle, it's so funny while you were talking, that last piece of what you were saying, in every conversation we've ever had about development, leadership development, it always starts with the leader. And in that moment when you were talking, I'm thinking, yeah, the leader first has to have hope, because if they don't have hope, how are they going to articulate it? How are they going to create that space, you know, with their team? So it always comes back to, you have to develop yourself to develop others. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a key.
Oh, it's that way. Change management.
It's everything. It's everything.
Yeah, anything else. Because as the leader goes, so goes the team, right? There's one other Zig Ziglar one And I'm going to read it because I didn't write it down here. It's hope is the power that gives a person the confidence to step out and try.
Mhm.
So to your point, I think as a leader, it's going to be critical that we do give ourselves hope first, because otherwise we may not even step out and try.
That's right. That's right. And I think for me today, the takeaway is, one, hope is a leadership trait. That I am a for leadership trait in the argument of, or the debate.
Okay, good to know. I was so wondering. I wasn't clear on that. So thank you.
It is a leadership trait. And I think the other part is, I really like the idea that it's this combination of engagement and vision and alignment. Because although I struggled, because I did want to say the cycle again, but I think that triad of alignment, engagement, and vision, I think is the complete wraparound of it.
Yeah. And so I'll say this because it dawned on me with this process that you're talking about, because I'm all about planting seeds. I'm all about planting seeds. And I think hope is the seed to future success.
Yeah.
I think hope is that seed. So I would encourage people to plant lots of them. We are in a time, and always will be in a time probably, that we're going to need them. So I've enjoyed this chat. I mean, and how it evolved and you know, how it came about. So this has been Leadership Soundbites with RokoM and Michele. So I encourage you to, like, share, and subscribe. And just let us know what topics you want to talk about. And we're definitely going to research them, and we're definitely going to talk about them.
Yes.
So thank you. Until next time.
Bye-bye.